you think that Mitchell and Waring are Lewis are momentarily?
Well, they said that they would be here shortly, so I don't know if that's moments or if it's 10 minutes. And, well, she's opening the door, so maybe. There they are. Okay.
That's momentarily.
Yes, momentarily means lots of things. Mayor, turn on your mic so that everybody can. Okay.
I think, given the numbers we're going to review today, that a prayer would be in order. Yeah. Councilmember Mitchell, would you mind leading us in a brief prayer, please?
Dear Lord and Father of all mankind, forgive our foolish ways. We clothe us in our rightful mind and deeper reverence praise. Father, come in our midst as we go over this budget and see, make things better for the citizens of the city of Charleston. Let us be mindful of what we're here today to do, to make sure that we're not going to spend the money foolishly, but we're going to do things that to help one another. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Good afternoon. You have your draft budgets on your desks, and as well as the executive summary, and also a list of everything that was requested and funded or not funded. With that, I will get started. The longer spreadsheet right there, that's everything that was additional requests and what we funded and did not fund, so you can have a good detail of that. Okay, so our last, and I'm sorry, my allergies are acting up, so I'm going to try not to throw myself into a coughing fit. So I apologize if I do. Okay, I will move this closer. How about that? That's better? Okay. Okay, so we had our budget workshop on October 18th, and that was where we were, but that was very preliminary numbers. So we were at a deficit of $4.2 million at that point, which included a COLA. Since it did not. That's right. Okay. So changes since then, we had the housing bond referendum that passed. We will have to get another bond this year for the Daniel Island Community Center, or not this year, and I'm always a year ahead of myself, in 2018. The COLA changed, then the review of departmental requests were $2.4 million that we added to the budget for 2018, and that included adding a resiliency division, 3 short-term rental enforcement officers in livability and tourism, 3 parking enforcement officers to enforce extended meter hours. We're in the entertainment districts. We're planning to extend meter hours until 10 o'clock at night. Grant match, Shiloh Church. We'll have to replace the windows in the church because the church, they're actually taking their windows with them. So that would be an expense that we'll have. We are using hospitality fees to fund the short-term rental officers and also the PEOs. So those are we transferred that money, and that will be included in the transfers that you'll see. Business license revenues, permit fees, increase based on late assessments, and also includes the increase in the fees that you all passed earlier this year, and then fund balance reserve. So our total projected revenue for 2018 was $172 million. Projected expenditures is $179. So our deficit is $7 million. Then transfers in from the enterprise funds will balance that budget of $7 million. So how did we balance the budget? Yes?
The change was that the cost of living allowance or COLA came out. You know, it was not included in the cost of living increase was not included in order to get to the numbers that she's at right now.
Which
So
we'll get to.
we had to do that to balance the budget, but I just want to make that clear.
So while we're looking through all of this, what would have been, what would have been the gross amount necessary to fund a 3% COLA?
$2.6 million. 2.65, actually.
6.5?
Mm-hmm. Any COLA.
I think what we're going to see is that we had a whole bunch of stuff. We had some requests from the fire department for those things. We've got a huge problem with our pension that we're having to fund. At some point, I think we've got to make some kind of distinction as to which one of those we're going to do. And unfortunately, I don't think we've got any choice on the pension other than to, start beating up on our legislative delegation and those folks there. I mean, they're the ones that basically screwed this up and passed it along to us. So, and this is just the beginning, as
That's
I
right.
understand.
And I talk about
You're
this
going to go
more in
into that
detail,
later,
yeah,
but I mean,
throughout the
we got
presentation.
this same problem about the next 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years.
Until 2023. So how did we balance the budget? It was a great feat. Modest growth in most of our revenues like we do every year. Property taxes, Charleston County, we had a 3% growth factor for real property and 5% for vehicles, 7% growth factor for real and 1% growth for Berkeley County.
You're welcome from Berkeley County.
Thank you,
Okay.
Councilmember White. We appreciate that.
After all those years of being, after all those drag years.
We'll get to even yet.
Business licenses is based on growth trends for each license category. Building and related permits, modest increase, plus the estimate for increases in the fees that you all passed. The increase in revenues from 2017 was $7.5 million. Expenditures. Our expenditures increased from 2017 to 2018 by $7.9 million. There's things we had no control over, which was retirement at $1.9 million, healthcare almost $1.3, and workers' compensation is $658,000. And all of those combined is $3.9 million. We had other obligations, grant matches. We'll have the Waring Senior Center contribution in 2018 at $100,000, and then the Praise House renovation that we agreed to pay 50% of at $150,000. We will be accumulating new debt, the affordable housing bond, one payment we're anticipating at $700,000, and Parks and Recreation for $400,000. And that all depends on when we get those bonds, but we're anticipating at least one payment in 2018.
That Park and Recreation bond, that's on Daniel Island too. We're having to spend that. I just thought I'd throw that in.
That reduces the 7% down to 3.
Right. Is that $12 million for that rec bond for Daniel Island?
Yes, it's one payment, but yes, $12 million. So next year it'll be $800,000.
But what I'm saying, the whole bond.
It's $12 million, right? No. It will include other things. There's a golf course renovation.
Yeah, where's the other four?
Yeah, carved out for other parks and rec. Golf course renovation, Moultrie. There's some other things in there. And we're not sure that it's going to be $12 million. That's just what we're estimating it as right now.
What was the golf course renovation? How
I
much was that?
think it's 3.5 million, but we're expecting some, it's 3 million with some contributions from other people, so we won't have to absorb that full amount. It's a good question.
Sorry.
I said that is a good question. I'm not sure. In terms of the golf course renovation or the bond itself?
Well, the golf course primarily, I was just trying to get a handle on what that is since I'm on that commission.
It's early next year, early 2018.
But I mean, I did know what the whole spectrum was for what they were going to spend it on. I know there's a lot of needs out there, but Anyway, I'll
Okay.
figure it out later.
So before we had any additional requests, our deficit was $5.8 million. And then we had additional requests from departments that totaled $20.8 million. So obviously, there's no way that we could fund that, those requests. But we did fund $4 million of those requests. $2.2 million of that is in the general fund and $1.7 million in the enterprise fund. So the items from the general fund, we'll have the second year of the performance assessment, establishing the Office of Resiliency. We're replacing Route Smart tablets for garbage collection, and we're adding tablets to street sweeping and trash collection.
I have a question. How much does it cost to replace the Road Smart?
I forget how much it was per tablet.
No, you said the Road Smart, what is?
It's the tablets for Route Smart, the iPads that you put, that they have in the vehicles with them. That's what that's for.
I think the worst thing that we ever did when we bought that Road Smart years ago, to me, it's a waste of money. But, you know, I'm not out there on the streets, but it just don't work that well. It's not helping us. But I mean, that's not your problem. We'll deal with that later.
Okay. Livability and tourism, we're upgrading one existing code enforcement officer to a supervisory position. This is necessary with the addition of the other officers that we'll have for short-term rental, just to help with the supervision of all of the tourism or all the enforcement officers. We're adding the 3 enforcement officers for short-term rental, but we will be transferring hospitality funds to cover those costs. We have software for the short-term rental enforcement that will help them identify the properties and that type of thing. That will also be funded with hospitality, and you'll see that in the transfer in.
That's pertaining to the short-term rental, if it's approved or not.
I'm sorry.
If the short-term rental is approved or not, that's, so if it's not approved, will they make adjustment with this or not?
Well, we're using hospitality funds for that, so it would just stay in the hospitality fund. We wouldn't have to do the transfer in. And then also a GPS tracking system for the carriage tours that will help identify, it will help us better keep track of the company that's supposed to do the sanitation and cleaning of that. And it will inform the tourism enforcement officers that the cleanup has been done. So we felt like that was a good investment. Parks asked for $388,000 additional for projects and monthly maintenance of facilities, and we included $190,000 of that request. We added 1 combination inspector to building inspections, and they need that to maintain their ISO rating. So they have there's a quota, they have to make sure they have enough inspectors based on the number of permits or inspections that they have. Broad Street Sidewalk Project, that will also be funded with hospitality funds. We have additional funds for garbage carts due to a new contract and additional carts that are needed. A scrubber and sweeper for Market and King Streets that will also, or King Street, that will also be funded with hospitality funds. And then we have a match to Charleston County for the Folly Road multi-use path, which will also be funded with hospitality funds. We have an increase in operating and building expenses for 134 Cannon Street that will come online this year. And again, the contribution to the Waring Center tuition reimbursement program to match the needs, and then Shiloh Church, again, window replacement. So all of that, the effect on the general fund was only $1.1 million because a lot of that was funded with hospitality.
Amy, can you
Sure.
give us an idea how much of the hospitality tax revenue did we use for those projects? The cumulative total, do you have any idea?
Or just in here,
Yes, what we just
it's
went over.
a little over $1 million, yeah. And then enterprise funds. We looked at the enterprise funds to see how much can support the general fund to help us balance the budget. We have additional debt this year for the West Edge Garage that will begin in 2018. We had some additional revenues and expenses. We're adding 3 parking enforcement officers for the extended meter hours so that they can enforce those hours, but that will also be funded with hospitality funds. We're repointing the brick on the city market, but that will be covered by the city market fund. Raising the field at the ballpark, which will also be covered with hospitality. Smaller maintenance projects at the ballpark, we had to increase for credit card fees for the parking meters, since we're changing the parking meters out, the meter communication fee, and then the debt service on the West Edge garage. Revenues, extending, we're actually increased them $1 for next year, and then also the extended hours until 10 o'clock in the entertainment district. And then some of the garage rates we increased, just that was for monthly parkers that we increased.
Can I ask a question about the
Sure.
ballpark? I just don't know the inner workings of this. And I think you made a comment about this at our last workshop. We do not receive any income out of the operation of the Raleigh Park. We do receive income out of the
We
park.
see a little bit, yes. We have an agreement with the River Dogs, and they pay us, and I forget exactly, do you know? About $375 a year.
So we get $375,000. What are we on the hook for as far as maintenance and other expenses?
Yeah, all of it.
Except for that new add-on that they paid for themselves. So
That's right.
we only get $375,000 a year. And then would you go back to that prior screen on the, so we have to use hospitality funds to raise the field. What is that going to cost us?
$1.2 million,
Just that.
and we have to do that every 5 years.
So we go in the hole $800,000 roughly to this particular year. Is that just what the agreement called for when we constructed the park? And how long is that agreement in effect?
That's a good question.
We just, a couple of years ago, they revised that contract. I don't know right now how long it goes for. Probably until for as long as the River Dogs own it, I guess.
I think we've got a good, don't quote me on it, so to speak, but it's something like 10 or more years. And the biggest liability is that raising of the field. And so after this year, I would like for us to set aside an annual reserve, so it doesn't hit us all in one budget year, that we build a reserve for that, because we know it's going to happen every 5 or 6 years. We're going to try to also extend the life of it if possible, but how successful that'll be, I don't know.
We need to get with the River Dogs and see if we can't put 25 cents a ticket or something on there. And how many people come to the gate at the River Dogs every year? We get a couple 100,000 people, right? Yeah. I mean, we're going to have to think, if this is what we're going to be doing every year on our budget, is going through things like this, we're going to have to think way out of the box for some of these things. And Riley Park being a long-term maintenance issue for us.
Do we get any money out of the Citadel?
It's around $7,000 a year. They pay
That's for the lights though, right?
$100 per game plus some.
For the lights, right? Yeah, but that's just for the lights.
For who?
Jimmy,
Yes.
how much, let me see how I phrase that. How much more money do we got committed to the West Edge project? We gonna be putting in that project?
It's all, we don't have any more committed to that for 2018.
No more for 2000, but we do have more committed after that?
We will, but it should be covered by the TIF, and even if it's not, we have to reserve some general fund, eventually when the TIF picks up, then we will pay ourselves back for those expenses, which is what we did with the bond that we just borrowed. We're paying ourselves back for at least half of those, for the half of the costs. It goes one half to us and one half to MUSC Foundation. So we'll pay ourselves back for some of the costs that we've incurred.
Any idea what kind of monies that MUSC or them have spent on
I'm
this
sorry?
project?
I have the numbers, but I don't have them with me, Councilmember Lewis, but I can find them out for
Those
you.
numbers, because it look like every time it looks around, they're coming to us for monies. I'd like to see what they've spent on that
Okay.
project so far.
Sure, I can do that. Okay. Okay, so the surplus in the enterprise funds was $7.7 million, so that helped us balance the budget. So what we couldn't do was no increases for any employees. We couldn't do a COLA, we can't do the fire pay plan, and we could not increase ABM's minimum wage to bring that up. You know, we talked about this before, that we wanted to give a higher COLA because we're seeing a higher attrition rate, and we're obviously with this, we're fearful that we'll have an even higher attrition rate, and our salaries are falling below other municipalities because they've been able to give higher COLAs the last couple of years. Without a higher COLA, our employees their net take-home pay will be in the negative, actually, with the increases they've had to absorb for retirement and health care. So the retirement rate increased an extra 0.5% to the employees withholding in 2017. Oh, I'm sorry. And then health insurance, those were the increases at the different rates, employee plus children, per pay period for our employees. And dental also increased, but I didn't add that to the slide. So in order for us to make our employees whole, we would have to give them a 1.1% COLA at a minimum in order to bring their salary, their net take-home pay back up to where it should be with the retirement and health care increases. And also without a COLA, we were not able to bring the firefighter starting pay up to where we wanted to bring it to. No minimum wage increase for our employees. We're going to try to bring that up to $11.50. It's at $11 right now. And the ABM employees will continue to be well under the city's minimum wage.
Do we have any idea how many of our employees are at the minimum wage level?
We know that. I don't have the number with me.
I mean, do you have an idea what percentage?
I don't.
Well, you know, last year we brought our minimum pay up to $11 an hour, which is above the minimum wage. But apparently there are some ABM workers in the garages who were still at lower levels, and we didn't bring them up, you know, to that level last year when we did the other city employees. And our goal was to get everybody up to $11.50, and so we were kind of counting on the COLA to get us most of the way there.
We don't have that many city employees still with ABM now. I think we only have a few.
That's right. But still, you know.
We're talking about everyone that works?
For ABM.
We reimburse ABM for whatever the salaries are, so we can lift their salaries if we so choose. And the idea was to try to bring them up as well, you know, maybe not to $11, but try to get them up to at least $10 an hour.
Yeah, we were trying to bring them up to $10.25. They're at $8.50 right now.
We had a couple of meetings with them. But also with that, many of those employees not going to have a job if things stands the way it is now with ABM, with this automation.
Well, Councilmember Seekings is going to conduct a meeting and a hearing on that.
I'm going to throw them out if I can.
All right.
So I just included a history of our COLAs since 2008, and you'll see that 1 year there was anybody over 60,000 K in salary did not receive an increase. We had 2 years where employees didn't receive any COLA whatsoever, and 3 years where the COLA was less than CPI. We tend to try to keep it at CPI. So over time, that was like a 14.2% increase for our city employees, and CPI was 17.6%. So we're below CPI. In balancing the budget, we also included a salary savings of $4 million, which means we'll have to have a soft hiring freeze next year as well. So we'll have to hold vacant positions open longer in order to meet our salary savings goal. And possible consequences of all this is a higher attrition rate in 2018, morale, and impact on city services. So why was this year so tough? Go ahead.
Amy, before you go to the next question, why was this year so tough? The former question throughout the presentation was how did we balance the budget? And I just want to share with my fellow council members and with everyone here, it took a heck of a lot of hard work on the part of Amy and Kathy and Matt and the other members of our finance department, and they looked at every revenue stream that we have and tried to see if there was any way we could maximize it. They looked at every expenditure category we had and looked to see if there was any way we could reduce it. And then they look particularly carefully, I wanted to share, at the things in our budget that we are legally allowed by state law to pay for with hospitality funds. And Kathy has been doing this for years, but she scrubbed it one more time, and that's why you heard that phrase come up a number of times, because we have these legal constraints, but to the extent allowed by law, we're trying to use every hospitality dollar that we can to legitimately pay for city expenses. So that's part of the answer to that question. How did they even get to the balanced budget?
So why was this year so, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I appreciate, because I've sat in on a couple of those hospitality tax things. I know there's a lot of things pulling in a whole bunch of directions. And I know, Mr. Mayor, you and I have had a conversation recently about the TIFs and how that money has to be spent in those areas. Have you looked at those TIFs as to how we might use some of these or fund some of these shortages with that TIF money? Because some of them have been very successful and have reduced a lot of money. And I mean, is there some way that we can, and that's the real problem with TIFs, is that it has to be spent in that area. So if for example, you had drainage, a whole drainage project, I know that we're not talking about this right now, but you could use the TIF for the drainage, which would maybe make more money available to other parts of the city. So I don't know if that consideration has been made and how that might work into all this. Is there any way that we could, because I'm troubled by particularly the low income folks, you know, that
Absolutely.
are not going to get a raise. And I mean, my priority would be to try to find some money somewhere to give, say, everybody up to $30,000 or $40,000 of 1 or 2%. You know, and I don't know whether you can do it like that or not, but legally, but and not do the others, but those lower paid folks, when you dump all this stuff on them that they don't have any control over, they got to eat, and that really cuts into their food budget. So right. I don't know whether there's been a lot of consideration for all that. So that was really my question.
Well, I would answer the question yes. And of course, TIF fundings have to be spent for infrastructure improvements, and so we can't pay for a police officer's salary or anybody's salary for that matter, but we can invest in infrastructure, and that can include drainage. And so that's why when we went over that budget for the Cooper River TIF district, that we went ahead and kind of loosely allotted a few $1 million for King and Hugie Street drainage improvements, and another one that's come to my attention recently has been the Calhoun West project that we're going to need oodles of money for, and the north end of where we need to place a one of those shafts is in the Gateway TIF district, and just securing that property and drilling that shaft down may cost $4 or $5 million, and that's a great example of something that we could use TIF funds for to supplement our drainage project.
That money available for the rest of the city for other needs. And I'm just saying that seems to me. I mean, I don't even know whether you could use TIF money for debt service. Is that you can't? You
do, but only for the debt that you borrow for the TIF.
Just for that debt.
Right.
Okay.
And Councilmember Moody, most of the drainage projects are paid out of the drainage fund and stormwater, so it doesn't even hit the general fund, those expenses.
I didn't want to get thrown into drainage because I know we're going to talk about that at another time, but I just want to be sure that when you say scrub, and I've got another question about one particular expenditure later on, but anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead. That's where I am.
Councilmember Moody, I love your comments. We got some of the finest people work in the city, for the city, from finance on down. but a lot of times, they pay very little attention to the low-level employees. And they are the backbone of our city. You know, we get all these good accolades written in these big magazines and stuff, but you know who makes that happen? Those people that dump that garbage, those people that clean those parks, those people that clean those catch basins and stuff like that. They are the backbone of the city. Because I can tell you right now, you might just go and let's just say, call Ms. Cabinets out there and say, well, Ms. Cabinets, we want to tear this sidewalk up. Can you tell me how many feet of concrete we need to put this sidewalk back down? She probably won't be able to tell you that. But you got those guys out there that can do it. They do it. SC&G and other companies come out there. They put lines under the street. They tear up the street. A lot of time they get these contractors to fix the streets back. But when it comes to those curbing, they can't do it. They have to call city employees to do it. We got some of the best employees that any city would want. These guys working should be getting paid like brick masons are getting paid, but they're not. So I'm glad that you are thinking about them, and I'm hoping the staff, every time they do a budget, they will think about them, because they are the backbone of the city of Charleston. I don't care what anyone has said. But thank you for your great comments.
Okay, so why was this year so tough? We had obviously the retirement increase, $1.9 million for 2018. You can see we still have until 2023. It's over $1 million with the exception of the final year in 2023. So it's still $5.7 million additional increases. Of course, those numbers include COLAs and things, so it might be a little bit inflated, but that was our best guess. We had a perfect storm of insurance increases. So we had health insurance increase by almost 1.3 million, workers' compensation 658. Our property insurance also increased by $120,000. So it was a tough year for insurance. We've also noticed some adverse trends going on. So that is just increasingly straining our general fund. So we've made it work without property taxes in so far, but it's getting tougher, especially in these types of years where you have increased expenses that are out of our control.
Maybe on that insurance, I mean, it is a perfect storm. We've been, I know for the last 3 years probably, we've had at least that much each year as a surplus.
That's right.
Was there anything particular that hit this year? I mean, was it?
We had some big claims this year. We had some big, both workers' comp and health insurance. And so when they give you your pricing for the next year, they look at how much they're going to have to pay out in the following year. So that's really what happened.
Well, the workman's comp.
And plus just increases anyway, right?
Workman's comp and maybe the health insurance claims too. Is there something we need to be looking at? I mean, workman's comp usually is some kind of an injury.
Mm-hmm. We had big injuries this year.
I'm not aware of what those are, but have we corrected those? Or we?
Yes, we have. We actually added a safety officer this year who has been working with those departments almost on a daily basis to ensure that we're working as safely as we can.
Hope is that next year we'll be back.
Hopefully, yes.
On that $2 million.
That's right. So one of the trends that we've noticed is the general fund deficit is growing every year at a rate faster than our parking fund surplus. So, you know, we use our enterprise funds to help us balance the budget, and parking fund is the largest of the enterprise funds. And we just noticed if you see the blue line, that's our parking fund surplus, and it's been great as compared to our general fund deficit, which we usually always have. But you'll notice in 17 and 18 how in 16 they meet, 17 and 18 they're together, and actually our deficit is higher than the trend for our surplus, if that makes sense.
Before we leave that, where in the budget does this park and ride come in for the employees downtown? Talking about the property out on Morrison Drive and that kind of stuff, the cost of all of that. When is that going to hit? Is that part of this budget? Or is Carter just going to fund all that for us?
Carta is not going to fund all of it, and we're still putting the numbers together, but it is going to be remarkably low number. It's going to be in the $40,000 range for the first estimate we got for the 150 spaces, and then there's another 63 spaces that have to be striped out.
Well, I guess my question is, have we put that in here, number one, but number two, is there something else that this money is maybe available for to help with the parking downtown? I mean, more bus routes or something.
The bus routing is Carta's job, and we're working on that. And for downtown, we're doing okay. We'd like to do a little bit better. And the 20, by the way, stayed free. So basically, all the routing downtown is free, and we have no intent to change that. When we get the circulator route for the park and ride, again, we're trying to figure out what the cost of putting that on the ground is going to be to figure out how close to free we can make it, but it's not going to be completely free. And then we're going to have to talk to the mayor about where some of the parking increases go to see if that can be something that can supplement it.
And to answer your question, in terms of, it's not in this budget, we have some general fund, or some reserves actually, that we could use to fund that
So
in our capital improvement plan.
That means we've got this surplus here in this parking fund. Is there plans, and I've got my eyes on maybe a parking garage in the Avondale area for that business community over there. Is there any plans?
No, and our parking.
Any plan to study that or look at that, or?
Well, right now, our parking fund could not absorb any. We have the 999 Morrison garage that is planned, and there's no way our parking fund can absorb any more debt after that. Because as you can see, our surplus right now is decreasing over time. And parking garages don't make money until after the debt is paid off. So we have the Midtown garage that we put online. We now have the West Edge garage, and then we'll have 999 Morrison. So that trend will only get worse over time. So I don't think that our parking fund could even absorb another parking garage. I know, I'm sorry. If you become one.
All I saw was parking fund surplus.
Sometime between 2017.
That's when you really got a big problem.
Yeah, well, that was the only thing I could see was the word surplus, so I was going to try to spend it.
Have we had an increase in parking fees recently?
I don't remember what year.
The garages.
In the garages?
Not on the streets. Oh, we did a little bit.
Remember what year? We have. On the street. We have, but I don't remember what year. It's a couple of 2-3 years ago. Yeah.
And what was that increase? Does anybody know?
On the meters, we went up 25 cents an hour. It was 75 cents an hour, right? We went to Robbie's here.
Yeah, Robbie's back there.
Yeah.
Aren't we getting ready to do another study?
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
the whole thing, the garages, and I mean, those need to be coordinated.
Right, but we are increasing meters $1.
Going to 2.
We're going to $2. So, and that's in this budget.
So, wait a minute, so make sure I'm clear. We have not increased the parking garage, or we have increased the parking garage?
We have.
We have, but our thought now is to try next to increase again on parking meters so that we encourage people to use the garages, as opposed to the parking on the streets. And in addition, to extend the hours, particularly in the central business district, say Upper King Street, after 6 o'clock, that's just free parking all up and down King Street, and people are using it till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I see those PEOs out there 9 or 10 o'clock at night writing tickets on King Street.
Well, if you're parked illegally, but if you're in a metered space.
I'm talking about Mr. Mayor, I'm up and down that street at least 2-3 times. 3-4 times a week, because I called traffic several times and asked them, but yes, they do, they be out there writing tickets late at night, I can tell you that.
Right now, they shouldn't be, because it says it's only.
I'm not complaining about it now.
Yeah.
But we need to do something, but.
Yes, sir.
We got to look at, the people that use it in restaurants and stuff, downtown, they're paying all this hospitality fee and all that. I think we really have to stop the time. I think probably around 9 o'clock is good to stop writing tickets on parking meters.
Right.
Because, we got PEOs out here in certain neighborhoods, 5 a.m. in the morning. So we got people just about round the clock right now, as it is. But, I know y'all can do a parking study, look at all that, so there's no complaints on those parts.
Another trend that we're seeing is our general fund expenditures are growing at a faster pace than our revenues. And our police and fire expenditures have actually exceeded our property tax revenue. So if you see the two top lines, the red line is our general fund expenditures, and the green line is our revenues. And then on the bottom, the orange is the property tax revenue, and the other line is police and fire budgets together. You see how they are more than what we're collecting in property taxes every year. And then the two triangles were actually where we had millage increases that were specifically for police and fire.
For those of us who can't see that far, can you read those numbers to us, please?
Well, I can't read you the numbers, but I mean, I don't have the exact numbers.
That's okay.
But, so the red line here is our expenditures, which you see is up to over our $179 million this year, and our revenues are 172, so you see where the expenditures are much higher. And then property taxes here, and our police and fire budgets are well above our, not well above, but above our what we're collecting in property taxes every year. We had 2 million increases in 2008 and now in 2013 that were specifically for police and fire. We see that we still outtrended those millage.
Saying that another way maybe is that the police and fire take up about 63% of our budget, and the property tax revenue is about 48%. And so what you're saying is that gap's getting further.
Right, it's getting bigger and bigger. So then I'll talk about the millage increases that we did have. 3.3 mills in 2008 was specifically for fire, and that was to implement the recommendations we had from the team that did the review. And that included 18 new firefighters. Our fire's budget was $14.5 million in 2007, and increased by $3.4 million to $18.4 in 2008. And the millage increase generated $2.3 million. So the millage increase didn't even cover the amount that we increased their budget by. In 2013, we had a 3.5 millage increase, and that was for the SSRT team after the Sandy Hook tragedy, where we added 19 police officers. And then it also enabled us to purchase a ladder truck, but that was a one-time purchase. And then that was passed in council in March of 2013, and it generated almost $3.5 million in revenues. So why does that matter? It's just as shown in the graph, property taxes are not covering the full expenditures of the police and fire departments, even with those millage increases that we did, and they've exceeded property tax revenue since 2010.
Amy, is it not a fact that all three of those tax increases have in effect been rolled back by the lost money over the time?
Yes.
The increase in the local option sales tax has negated that 3.5, the 1.5, and the 2 mil in the drainage has in effect been rolled back by that local option sales tax increase. Is that?
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, in other words, if a person's property tax went up $25 on a $300,000 home, they realize that net gain by the increase in.
If we raised the drainage by 2 mils,
right,
the local option sales tax went up enough to offset it.
Right.
So they should have had a net tax decrease, even though we increased the millage.
Right.
And we're one of the only cities around that does that puts 100%. I think the actual number is like 90, but we roll 100% back. And I think it's about $1 million that this thing keeps going up, or I don't know exactly what that number was, but it's offset.
Budget to return 100%, but then when the actual numbers come in, it's in the 90 percentile that we give back. So in the meanwhile, our city is growing. We've added 93 employees since 2010. 50 of those were in the fire department and 40 in the police department. Workloads have increased at a rate above personnel increases for most of the departments. Parks, we continue to buy and build facilities that Parks is ultimately responsible for. We bought properties that will become parks. We've added 8 properties or facilities that they're responsible for in the past few years. And 2 additional properties are included in the 18 budget. That's Shiloh and 134 Cannon. Daniel Island Recreation Center and Hall 2 site will be coming online in the near future. And then we have Stony Field. What that impact will be, we're not certain. But Parks staff numbers have not increased at all, even though they have all this additional work. Clerk of Council, we've had several boards and commissions that have been established in the last 2 years, but their staffing has not increased. Information technology, we have increased staff in IT, but their workload, it continues to increase because of public safety projects. We have a lot of MDTs that we add every year, body cameras. We have the Energov project, which has been a huge project for them to maintain as well. Human resources, we have increased attrition rate, which increases their workload for recruitment, hiring, and training, and also increased costs for all of those reasons. Planning, we have the West Ashley Master Plan, various moratoriums that they've been working on, zoning changes, and they've had a lot of studies in the last few years as well. Fleet, our fleet is aging and requires more maintenance and repairs. Just our growth in our fleet. Lease purchase continues to increase annually just because of our fleet needs, because we have an aging fleet and we deferred replacement of vehicles during the recession. We're still trying to catch up from that. We have new fire stations that are requiring new trucks and replacement of fire trucks, which obviously we need. Police, they have federal mandates, and then all the special events that are requiring their police presence is